Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for May 26th, 2023. I'm Benji Fisher sharing my screen, and also present are Afra Shal and Ralph Kohler. The issue for today's meeting is 336-1526, and one request was to look at the Drupal 7 backport of the project messaging feature. So that is issue 335-7707. And just maybe I'll open a copy of that tab so I can have one scroll to the top. Backport the announcements feed, core module to Drupal 7. I think the usability review that was requested is fairly limited. We can ask for a review of the placement of the new link with the icon, because it is different in Drupal 7 versus Drupal 10. This is the paragraph I'm reading. So I haven't looked at Drupal 7 much recently, but I have a fresh install here. And I've checked out the merge request for this issue. First thing, of course, we have to do is uninstall the overlay module. And the other thing we have to do is install the announcements module. I remember back in the day, one of the sample drush commands in the documentation was a command called drush unsuck. And one of the things it did was uninstall the overlay module. That's how popular it was. So let's see, now that it's enabled, we have links to help and permissions. And I see in the toolbar, there's a link for it. Can you see the hover text in the Zoom?
Nope.
Okay, well, I can see it. It says announcements and updates posted by the Drupal.org community, period. I suppose I could open an inspector. And this title text, of course, is what I was just reading. Permissions. View official announcements related to Drupal. By default, only the administrator has that permission. The help module for the help page. The announcement module displays announcements from the Drupal community. For more information, see the online documentation for the announcements module. Uses, accessing announcements. Users with the, quote, view Drupal.org announcements and, quote, permission may click on the announcements item in the administration toolbar to see all announcements relevant to the Drupal version of your site. There are two admin pages. One is the permissions, which we've already looked at, and the other is /admin/announcements feed, which I guess is also where this goes. Yes. And some recent announcements. Drupal 10.0.0 is available. What to expect from the announcements feeds. Contribute to Drupal and the open web.
Is there a function? I don't know if in the new version, in the recent Drupal version, do you see new announcement versus older announcement? Is there anything like that?
I don't know offhand. I should be able to set up a Drupal 10 site pretty quickly. Answer that question.
And do you know, did they mention about the Drupal 7 version? Are there any differences in the behavior or the visual compared to Drupal 10 announcement module?
They didn't say very much on the issue about differences. But we can see for ourselves in just a second. There we go. Oh, and I guess I probably have to. Oh, I did not guess the name. It would be under experimental. So let's see. Announcements _feed is the machine name.
Yeah. One difference I see right away is the announcement is on the right versus next to the menu on the left in Drupal 7.
Yes.
I think it's nice. Actually, oh, I see that on Drupal 7 they have a low admin and log out on the right side. So maybe it does make sense.
Right. And I think that is pretty much the question. So for the usability review, he asked for a review of the placement of the new link with the icon, because it is different in D7 versus D10. So the difference that you noticed is exactly what Poker 10 is asking us to review here. As for other differences, we have the settings tray area in Drupal 10, and it uses that. I wonder if I right-click on it and open a new tab. Ew, that's not very pretty. I do get a separate page, which is closer to what I have in Drupal 7. And I guess I see the same announcements. Drupal 10.0.0 is available, reading bottom to top, what to expect from the announcements feed, and contribute to Drupal in the open web. Questions, Ralph?
Not a question, but one slight worry. It looks like that the announcements feed is identical between Drupal 7 and Drupal 10. And I wonder if it wouldn't make sense from an editorial perspective and also from the perspective of the interest of the different target groups, people who are still on Drupal 7 and people who are already on 10, to have two separate feeds, basically, with sort of different focuses.
That's certainly true. And sort of the glaring example of that is that by this July, there's supposed to be an announcement as to whether Drupal 7's end of life will be extended for another year. And rumor has it that there will be an announcement made a month earlier at DrupalCon. And that's certainly something that we would want to put in the announcement feed for a Drupal 7 site. And it's pretty irrelevant for a Drupal 10 site.
Good idea.
If I remember correctly, from the last time I looked at the code, there is a way to indicate which announcements are relevant for which versions of Drupal. So the current announcements don't have any such distinction, but unless they've taken that feature out, I believe I believe there is a field saying which versions of Drupal to show it for.
That would be good. Yeah. And one detail I'm not sure about if it works on Drupal 10, but with Drupal 7 here, you've installed it right now, and those 3 messages are basically new for you. There's no indication in the menu item for announcements that there is a new message, and you basically wouldn't notice if a new message is available there, and it would go unnoticed. And I'm not sure if there is some sort of sign like a 1 or 2 in red. It was, I guess, in Drupal 10, if I'm not completely wrong, and if it's the same thing in Drupal 7.
So that is something we brought up when we reviewed the announcements
Yeah.
module before it went into Drupal 10. And that recommendation was not followed.
Oh.
Unless I'm misremembering something, this is just what it looked like when I enabled the module. If you'd like, I could reinstall this Drupal 10 site and try again, but I'm pretty sure that there is no indication of the number of new announcements. So the feedback they're specifically looking for is the placement of the link. I suppose if we thought it was a big improvement, we could ask to move it over along with the user menu. I guess that's what this is, both hello admin. I don't remember it saying hello, and the logout link. And currently it is to the right of all the other links in the admin menu. And it has sort of reverse coloring. It has a gray background, which none of the other links has. How does that compare to Drupal 10? It's only distinguished by its position. And I guess, why is it underlined? Is that because I clicked on it? If I reload the page, is it still there? Yeah, that's what it is. So any thoughts on placement of the link?
I think it just makes sense with existing menu Drupal 7 users, admins I used to. I would just make sure maybe but that's a tiny detail, there's more space between help and announcement, just like this space between the other menu items. But otherwise, I think it's fine.
Let's see if I can play with my browser tools. I suspect that what's going on is that the padding or whatever that introduces the gray background is using up some of that space. And
oh, it's position absolute. Okay. Or maybe that's just the icon. Yeah, the padding left is probably just not related to the other thing. No, that's not it. Can you do the LI? Can you click on the
There we
icon?
go.
Which one was it? Oh,
Uh,
without the background.
yeah, oh, that's an awfully detailed selector. Toolbar div.toolbar menu ul.li.active trail anchor. So yeah, if I disable the gray background, then I think the spacing is consistent.
Might need a margin instead of padding.
No.
Or it needs padding, but it also needs margin probably for.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think I agree with Ofer. Basically, I like it more in the context of Drupal 10 with the announcements on the right side, but that would collide with the hello admin and logout there at the moment. So having it on the left in the row of available menu items is the better choice, basically.
Okay. Of course, there's always a problem that when we're looking at a particular issue, we are biased to think about that. And the bias is that we think this is more important than we would at any other time. Are we giving it too much prominence? The order of the toolbar items is certainly not alphabetical. Help is on the far right, and then this is even further to the right, and it has the gray background, and it has the icon. None of the others has an icon except for the home link, which just has an icon. Oh, I wonder if I squish things together. It wraps. We don't have, responsive behavior where it shows just an icon at narrow screens. Does it stand out too much? If we removed the gray background for a little, for example, then it would be less clear that the icon is related to the word announcements, although I think it's still pretty closely related. Removing the gray background would fix the spacing and increase the contrast, I think. And I see that Thomas has joined us. Welcome. It's been a while.
Hey there, everyone. Sorry.
Hi, Thomas.
So we are discussing the announcements module for Drupal 7. It was recently added as an experimental module to Drupal 10, and it will be available in Drupal 10.1 when it's released next month. And there's an issue to make a backport to Drupal 7, and that's what we're looking at now. This is you may recognize the not the Bartik, the 7 theme. And so we're discussing the usability of this link up here.
Ah, cool. Thank you.
So I'm thinking that gray background is more trouble than it's worth. Agree, disagree? Go ahead, Ralph.
I've also added to the chat that the gray background has basically has a problem with color contrast, probably.
And you wrote white typo on gray background. So
Yeah.
you made the typo.
Oh,
Yes, there's less contrast.
It looks much nicer. I think it looks like this is, I think announcements shouldn't be so loud, right? Like they're there. And I think without the gray background, they already have an icon, which nothing else have icons there.
Yeah.
So
And the positioning all the way to the right.
but the problem with the gray background is that basically the active menu item has the gray background. For example, if you click on reports, then the reports has the gray background. So it's not exclusive to announcements. It's just a general behavior of Drupal 7, it looks like.
Oh,
okay,
so
that makes sense.
it's
It's
because
the
I was
current
looking at
item.
that page.
Yeah.
Of course, of course.
But coming back to I've rethought it. The positioning of and what you've said, Benji, the position of announcements in the context of Drupal 10 makes sense to have it on the right, because there you also have, when you click underneath, you have the sidebar swiping up and opening. That way, it makes a lot of sense. And taking in the context that in Drupal 7, you don't have the sidebar, but instead a dedicated page. It might make sense to move announcements even somewhere else in the order of available menu items, maybe even between dashboard and content, something like that. And that it's not that prominent, maybe even without the icon. I'm not sure. But context-wise, it is closer to dashboard than help from my perspective.
Is this something that the site administrator can change? Structure and menus. It's not the main menu, it's the management menu, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let me close my browser tools. Dashboard content structure, appearance, modules, configuration. Yes. So this is something that the site administrator can change pretty easily. So maybe it's not worth worrying too much about positions, since if the site administrator doesn't like it, they can change it.
But then there's one problem. If more margin or padding is added to announcements, like suggested it before today, it might work if announcements is in the position it is right now, that it makes sense to make it more prominent. But if the site administrator moves it to another position inside the menu, then it would look off.
So for example, if I move it above reports, you don't like that?
It's at the moment it's okay, but I thought the suggestion was to add some more padding or margin to the announcements menu item. And then it might be problematic, I thought.
So I think that was Offer's suggestion, but that's related to the gray background for the active
For the gray, okay.
item.
Then I misunderstood, sorry.
And now that we realize that is there just for the active page, that's out of scope. So the current page has its own highlighting in the menu, and that's appropriate. Now the hello admin and logat, that's a separate menu, isn't it? That's the user menu. Yep. And for example, I could switch the order to. Ooh. Well, that's odd. Maybe that's not the user menu. What is that? Oh well, I shouldn't get distracted by that. I'm curious, but I can check it out later.
I had a question about if there's going to be issues with favorites, where you can make any page you go, right? That plus, I think, next to management. I think it's adding something, but I don't remember where.
So that's adding to the shortcuts, which I collapsed earlier.
Okay, okay.
Um,
So that does not collide.
shortcut.
I don't know if we spoke about it already. Sorry about that. If yes, would it make more sense not to have the icon on announcement on 7?
Why would it be different between Drupal 7 and Drupal 10?
Because somehow in my mind, on 10, when it's on the side and it's it makes sense. Like that's what I would expect announcements. Where here it's like, like how often, like once a month, once every few months, we have an announcement. Like it shouldn't be an item that just like is so permanent on, in my opinion. And maybe, I don't know if there is any functionality like that, when a new announcement comes, have the bell that disappears once you read it per user, but I don't know if that's a functionality that's there.
I remember discussions about that, but I don't know where it ended up.
Yeah, but in my opinion, by default, having the icon there makes it so important, where most of the days in the working as an admin on the site, I wouldn't want to jump out like that.
Yeah, so again, that comes back to the question I asked earlier. Is it too prominent? And you think perhaps the bell does make it too prominent?
Yes. I like when it's like what you made it go in the middle of the menu as one of the items. It behave, yeah, it's a little, yeah, I like it just without the icon.
Thomas, go ahead. You're still.
So looking at the bell, I kind of think it depends on the frequency of the announcements. I tend to like an actual number that shows you how many announcements there are to read. So like a bell with a number that increments. Because if we were in the future to see functionality where announcements could come from more than just D.O, you could see them sort of like emails, announcements on an almost daily basis. So it's only too prominent in a situation where you rarely see an announcement, but it's not too prominent in something that's active where you might want to have a number to indicate how many announcements are actually there.
Yeah, and that's something that we recommended when we were reviewing the announcements module for Drupal 10, or maybe it was Drupal 9 at that point, that we wanted to have a number indicating unread announcements rather than just a fixed bell, and that recommendation was not followed. And I'm not sure whether it's keeping track of read announcements. I followed all of those links and reloaded the page. I'll reload the page again, and I don't see any difference. It's not as if the announcement link goes away once you've read them all. So it's not clear that it's even tracking them.
Totally makes sense. Thank you.
And in a sense, what we're dealing with here is that the Drupal organization is behaving sort of like a marketing department. And they're saying, we have this message that we want to push. And so we want to introduce the announcements module. I think there's a follow-up issue to discuss how to enable it. Let's look at the parent issue, which is, I guess the parent issue is just the version for Drupal 10. But I think somewhere they talked about follow-up issues. Maybe it's this remaining tasks. Figure out if, how, when to enable it on existing sites. So anyway, the Drupal organization has these messages they want to push, and so they want to make it as intrusive as possible, so you'll notice it. And I don't know, maybe we should go along with it, or maybe we should say, no, the site administrator gets to decide. Of course, the site administrator can choose whether or not to install the module, can reposition the menu item, or disable the menu item. So the site administrator has a lot of control. We're not actually forcing anything on them, except by defaults. And Thomas writes in the chat, as it stands, I would likely disable announcements if this is all that it does. Maybe it has value for folks new to Drupal. Okay. So of course, once you disable it, all these questions about whether the icon is drawing too much attention to it or not become moot, because it just won't be there.
I think the term, when you said it's kind of a marketing thing, that made things click for me. If announcements are a marketing tool to push marketing messages, then it doesn't have a lot of value for enterprise websites. The value in the module is if it's providing critical information in just-in-time format, and that's why you would want it to be highly visible. You'd want to have the bell or any of the more advanced that is not been yet. It's really marketing, and I remember seeing stuff like that on purpose like 8 years ago. If it's a marketing thing, then I would disable it personally, and a lot of my suggestions for or against become moot because I just wouldn't use it.
Right. So let's try to wrap this discussion up and decide what our recommendations are going to be. Who thinks that we should not have the icon at all? I see a thumbs up from Ralph and a thumbs up from Thomas.
Till I found a thumbs up for me.
Okay, so we all agree that that the icon makes it too prominent. We should be consistent with the other links. Okay. Positioning it to the far right. I suppose you have to position it somewhere. How is that controlled? I guess it's in the management menu. If I show row weights, within the administration menu, everything has a weight. So dashboard is -63, content -62, structure -61, but I guess those sort of automatically got assigned when I mucked with it. So I'm not looking at the default values here. Ralph asks in Slack, you mean far right to the user menu or management menu? I meant in the management menu. So by default, maybe I'll go back to the click and drag interface. By default, it shows up right here. Thomas, go ahead.
I would not want it all the way to the right because the dominant mental model is to have help to the far right in almost every application I know. But maybe one to the left of help would be my recommendation.
Agree, disagree? Ralph, Arthur? I think I agree with Thomas that it should not have more prominence than the help link. And Ralph in Slack suggests either next to dashboard or next to reports would make sense semantically.
Yeah, I liked it when it was before, to the left of reports.
Okay. So shall we make that as recommendation? No icon and put it to the left of reports?
Could you just move it left of reports and save for a second?
Sure.
So we see again.
And Thomas says in chat, it's of low value to me, and things to the far left are most used. I think sort of the standard advice is that things at the start and things at the end are the ones that are most remembered. So I think either far left or far right, it gives it more prominence than being stuck in the middle. Ralph, that's where you wanted it. What do you think?
I think, yeah, okay. Would give a thumbs up.
Okay, so we'll recommend getting rid of the icon and putting it to the left of reports and see, what sort of a reaction we get.
Oh, wait 1 second.
Yeah.
Could you go to the dashboard for a second? I wonder why not have a widget for announcement there. There would make way more sense than in a menu item.
Agreed. But since probably no one go to dashboard, no one will see this a new announcement
True.
feature, I guess. But it yeah, might be a great place to connect it as well.
Because when we've discussed the D10 version of announcements, that was also our recommendation, that it would make way more sense in the dashboard that is being redesigned.
Yeah, and then there's a new discussion about dashboard in D10 and
Yeah.
future versions.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see an option here. Search form, who's new, recent comments, who's online. Powered by Drupal, shortcuts indicate user menu. So guess by default, the dashboard just has these 3 blocks. And it's perhaps not a good example to have a freshly installed site. There's nothing much to see under who's new. There's nothing much to see under recent content. You know, normally there would be something at least in this block. But I think that's a very reasonable recommendation for a follow-up issue, that they add a block so that it can be added to the dashboard.
Yeah, definitely out of scope for this issue.
Right. And again, we are just talking about defaults here. Once the module is enabled, the site administrator can choose to rearrange the menu or disable the announcements link. And if it's a site that uses the dashboard module, then the site administrator can choose to enable it there. Okay, I will make those recommendations on the issue. And we still have 15 minutes left. What should we do with that 15 minutes? Ralph earlier was talking about something he might talk about, although maybe Arthur, you just mentioned recent discussions on the dashboard. Is that something you'd like to talk about?
I don't have enough information and details. I just remember multiple discussion, I think also in the UX, of what would it look like? How should it be by default? What would be good enough and useful information we would like to display? Because I think the main idea is when you log in today to Drupal, I think you get like /user or something like, here's yourself. And then allow it to show a dashboard with actual useful information and figuring out what is that useful information was the discussion, but I should go look for the discussion on Drupal.org.
Okay. Well, maybe at a future meeting.
Yeah.
I guess I'm looking at Drupal 7 now. I look at the Drupal Insight I installed and log out, log in. All right, you go to your user page.
Yeah, the chances are you probably don't want to see that page. Or unless, you know, there's dashboard things happening here. But that's
Right.
that what we thought, like once someone log in, what should be the first thing they see? It was part of that discussion.
Yeah, and sort of the easiest incremental change would be to add things to this page where without changing where you go.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah, for my current project, I'm actually thinking of doing that. You know, why fight the defaults? You know, the default is that when you log in, you go to the user page. So I do want to have some sort of dashboard information for this project I'm working on. So I am thinking of just putting it there on the user page. Why not?
Something I saw from a friend of mine, he likes to create these kind of pages. He add to the user page the actual actions that user can take right? Because everything is according to permissions and everything.
Permissions,
So
roles, yeah.
instead of the big, here's admin menu and good luck, find what you need there or get used to it. Right there in the user page, he added kind of, sophisticated view way, no code is his way. All the actions that are possible for that user to do.
All right. Let's have a quick look at the issue for today's meeting. And there's a long list. I think we pretty soon well, maybe once Drupal 10.1 is released, we'll stop carrying along the reorganized block items. That's sort of accomplished. Appearance page is too long and confusing. Go ahead, Rob.
In regards of the meta reorganized block items, 2 of the issues need some input still and discussions.
Okay, so let's just have a quick look at them. We have 10 minutes left. So what are the 2 issues?
The adjust the block terminology in layout builder to align with block and block content changes, and also the admin toolbar, which is still postponed because it's still not entirely sure if the move block layout from structure to appearance gets into 10.1 or not. It's RTPC.
Okay, so just for the sake of the recording, the meta issue is 3318110, reorganize block items in the administration menu. And the first issue you wanted to look at was 3318558. Adjust the block terminology in layout builder to align with block and block content changes.
I've wrote up a comment at the end, summarizing the current state. And there would just have to be some sort of consensus how to proceed or not to proceed.
Okay, so let me just have a quick look at the admin menu in the Drupal 10 site. So it's familiar to you and me, Ralph, and probably to Offer, maybe not to Thomas, but in Drupal 10.1, the block layout link is still there. We want to move it, but it's not going to happen in Drupal 10.1, I don't think. We now have block types directly under structure, and that's only just basic block for starters. And then under content, we have the new blocks tab, and this is what used to be called custom block library, which used to live underneath block layout in the structure menu. So we've reorganized those pages. And now that we've reorganized those pages and we've sometimes changed their titles, it's now the blocks tab. It's labeled content blocks. Those are terminology changes. So I believe this issue is about making corresponding changes in layout builder. So in particular, the screenshot shows create custom block. We're not calling them custom blocks anymore. We're calling them content blocks. So this issue is basically about changing that from custom block to content block, right?
Yeah. But there, for example, if you scroll up, choose a block is also one point that might be discussed, because the overall title is called choose a block, and the first thing you see underneath is content fields. So as a naive user, you ask, it's about blocks, but now it's about content fields. And that it was one of the suggestions to change choose a block to, for example, choose a component or pick another word or term for it. Yeah, and that's the summary at the end I've wrote up.
Okay. So it certainly seems a good idea to get some changes into Drupal 10.1. I guess we have just a week or two before the RC is scheduled to be released. So I guess my general advice would be to try to make progress by small steps and just make sort of the obvious changes, like changing custom block to content block for now, and separate out further changes to follow-up issues. But I haven't looked at it in a long time, so maybe I'm missing reasons for making additional changes all at once. And then the other issue you wanted to look at is 3317369. This is for the contrib admin toolbar module, and adjust to changes introduced in reorganizing block items in the admin menu. So we have made these changes, as I said, to the administration menu, and the admin toolbar module should be updated to be consistent. I'm pretty confident at this point that block layout is not going to be moved in Drupal 10.1. So maybe it's time to unpostpone it. What do you think?
I think maybe the best might be to create a follow-up issue for block layout and keep that issue about the content and the structure menu items, and yeah, but definitely unblock it.
Yeah, so this issue should be unblocked and should be scoped to the changes that have already made it into Drupal 10.1. And we can have a separate follow-up again for the admin toolbar module once the block layout issue is committed.
Could you scroll down a second to the end, please?
Why don't I jump down to the end instead of scrolling?
To my last comment. Those are the suggestions for the different sections for content, for structure.
Okay.
Do you agree, for example, for the block type menu item, to add a submenu with add block type and the list of available block type, that it's in line with the pattern content types, for example, uses?
Probably, but we don't really have time to get into that much detail. We have 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay.
And I think that the maintainers of the admin toolbar module sort of can use their discretion and make the appropriate changes, just once it's pointed out that that these changes have been made in Drupal core. It's going to be a little bit tricky of them because this the contrib module, of course, can be used with Drupal 10.0 or 10.1 once Drupal 10.1 is released. And you wouldn't want to make these changes on a Drupal 10.0 site. So they may want to make a separate branch or at least recommend that the release is only used for Drupal 10.1. 1 minute left. Any last minute comments before we say goodbye? So Ralph, will you unpostpone this issue and create a follow-up for the block layout issue?
Can do that.
I will comment on the issue for the announcements module for Drupal 7. Well, thank you all. I'll be back next week. Hope you will too.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
I won't.
I can't hear that at all. Your audio is garbled. Oh, I missed. Thomas had some comments in the chat. So he agrees that's a good follow-up issue. I think that's the only one. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.